And since the theme of today's talk is order from chaos, I will be hopelessly, irreverent here and talk about getting chaos from order. And I want to start with a personal anecdote here. My daughter Pari, she is 11, she goes to grade 5, and she studies a subject called history. Most of you must have also studied in school. And in it, the textbook talks about how Gandhiji was the architect of India's freedom struggle, and says, Gandhiji was the architect and he did a non-violent movement, he did civil disobedience, and then we came to something called the Dandi March. You must have heard of Dandi March, where Gandhiji actually broke the salt law imposed by the British colonial powers. And the book tells us that Gandhiji was born in 1869. The book tells us a lot of factual, biographical, historical things about the Indian freedom movement. And when thinking about Dandi March, I came up with a question that I never asked before. And I said, how old was Mahatma Gandhi when he walked 300 kilometers from his ashram in Sabarmati to the coast of the Gujarat shore in Dandi? And since the book tells me that he was born in 1869, it would make him around 60 years at that time. How come a very frail old man walking with a stick, very thin, and you must have seen images of Gandhiji at that time, how come he walked 300 kilometers all the way to Dandi? And that's a question that never occurred to me before, and I don't know if it really has occurred to you at all here. And the reason Mahatma Gandhi actually took that much of an effort is because on the way he met 50,000 people across 40 villages and towns in Gujarat, across the 25-day march that he did. And in doing so, he spread the message of satyagraha, of non-violence, and enlisted followers. He started only with 78 people, but by the time they got there were thousands. And all this he did with passion, grit, determination, and a vision that was India's independence. And I started thinking, why is it that our children are trained to lose every shed of empathy while learning in their classrooms today? And that's a disturbing question for me. Teachers will tell you that there's so much to cover, so little time, there's a huge syllabus, very little time to cover it. And typically, if you would look at the syllabus, there would be probably an average of an hour per topic that you would have in the classroom time to cover. And this includes homework, testing, assessments, quizzes, reading the chapter, and so on and so forth. And the textbooks, like it or not, are the primary source. In today's age, we have multimedia classrooms, and that replaces the textbook, but essentially it's the same thing. And if you look at the curriculum, there are some very interesting things here. This is a particular learning objective here. It says, discuss the critical significance of Nazism in shaping the politics of the modern world. Any guesses for which class or curricula this particular learning objective would apply? Anyone? It's not an undergraduate history curriculum, a first year student in history. It is class 9 of the Central Board of Secondary Education of India. Isn't that amazing? And what they are trying to tell us here is that, we want our students to know about Nazism and how it affected the world. But we want them to know in only those terms as what the author has written in the book. And probably our teachers wouldn't know how to assess, or wouldn't be allowed to know how to assess any answer which is not given in the same words as one's written in the book. Our children also complain that they can't speak in an informal language. What they're saying is, we can't go ahead and paraphrase what we have learned in our own words, because we do not know whether it will be acceptable to the person who checks the exam. And you must have all seen the great movie 3 Idiots, produced by Amir Khan, in which the teacher asks the student what is a machine. And Amir, in his formal way says a machine is anything that's safe. On the teacher side, teacher education side, things are no better. So what's happening is that our government has a bureaucratic setup of education superstructures that are there, and in their wisdom they have created something called the District Institute of Educational Technology. It's abbreviated as DIET, which is DIET for Indian Education Public. And the DIET is supposed to ensure that basic education is high quality, that enrollments keep on increasing, that teachers get mentored. But the National Council for Teacher Education says the main problem facing DIETs is the non-availability of skilled teachers. Can you think of what that paradox does to us? In fact, they go on so far as to say that textbooks and curricula are never critically examined by student teachers or teachers that are regular teachers. They also say that teacher education programs provide little scope for teachers to reflect on their learning experience. It's exactly that for our students, and it means that teachers are not going through any different process, and that is shocking. The problem is compounded because we have a huge scale, right? We have 3 million square kilometers of space, all kinds of terrain. There is sea, there are mountains, inaccessible terrain. We have about 200 million school-going students. We have about 16 million college-going students, which is going to go up to 40 million by 2020. We have 26,000 colleges in India, and more coming up. Apparently, there need to be another 33,000 colleges for the demand to be met over the next 10 years. 6 million teachers, 1.25 million schools, 500 universities, 22 official languages. We have a huge scale. And perhaps because we have this huge scale, we are trying to figure out some kind of solution that fits the entire scale all at once. What we are in a sense saying is that we want order, right? We want to structure a huge problem, a huge scale problem, and make it into a process with predictable outputs. Order is the design and organization of systems and structures with predictable outputs. And we have done this through educational boards, we have done this through district, state and national agencies. We have done this through various superstructures for accreditation and for degree granting. And we have brought in unifying frameworks and a centralized direction to the entire effort. And when order fails, our classic response is to go ahead and impose more order, create a new committee for review. And we are ready to do this at any cost. In doing so, in performing this dance of order, what we are actually doing is we are making some vast oversimplifications. We are stereotyping learners. We are saying everybody learns the same way, give or take a few here and there. Everybody has the same learning experience, everybody has the same teaching experience, the same infrastructure, and we are making all these oversimplifications at such a large scale. And all this we are doing in order to massage all our students into a certification and assessment structure. So at the end you get a degree or a diploma, and that's the end of the story for you. And this leads us to some very interesting vision statements that people want to make. And I'll read this for you. This is about the engineer of 2020, and it's a vision statement of the National Academy of Engineering in the US. It says, what attributes will the engineer of 2020 have? And you must tell me if any of one of these attributes you have thought of. He or she will aspire to have the ingenuity of Lillian Gilbreth, the First Lady of Engineering, the problem-solving capability of Gordon Moore, who was the co-founder of Intel, the scientific insight of Albert Einstein, the creativity of Pablo Picasso, the determination of the Wright brothers, the leadership of Bill Gates, the conscience of Eleanor Roosevelt, the vision of Martin Luther King, and the curiosity and wonder of her grandchildren. Can you imagine a vision statement like this? If you thought, yes, right, what were they under the influence of when they wrote this? You should look closer back home to India, where in India, we are looking at our teachers in these terms. We are telling them that they must not be only equipped to teach, but also to understand students and the community of parents, so that children are regular in schools and that they learn, very importantly. They should also, they also mandate that teachers should refrain from inflicting corporal punishment. They should complete the entire curriculum within a given time. They should be able to assess students. They should be able to hold parent-teacher meetings. And as part of the school organizing committee, they should be able to also help in organizing the school, the overall running of the school. In addition, if that was not enough, they want teachers to also be co-collaborators, people who can co-create knowledge with the students. And these are very contradicting and very, very funny. They would be funny if they weren't so sad. And I believe at the root of all this scale is a big challenge. It's the key challenge that faces us right now, today, and will continue to face us. Order has been our typical solution. We always loved order. Order means getting things done on time, the flight is on time, you get dinner on time. And we all hate chaos, because chaos means something that's unpredictable, messy, uncontrollable. You can't put a finger to it. We don't want chaos. But what I'm saying is we need to have some more chaos from this orderly system that we have of predictable outcomes. And I'm making an important point. I'm saying don't fix the educational system. Why? Because you cannot fix it. You got to change the conception of what the education system is all about. Thankfully, by the beginning of the 20th century, people started looking at different kinds of systems. Systems that were not regularly explainable by saying they've got an input, they've got a process, and they've got outputs. But systems that relied on probability of it, on chance. And these systems were open and distributed. They had networks of elements that were arranged to form strong relationships with each other and adapt to the outside world. They showed emergent behavior which was not designed. You couldn't say that this is the behavior I want out of this particular system, but behavior emerged out of events that were happening in the system. They were self-organizing systems. So if there was a change that came across, something would change within the system to adapt and self-organize, self-reorganize to meet the new challenge. And they were chaotic in the sense of chaos theory. They were systems which were very, very sensitive to initial conditions. Small changes in initial conditions could create large changes in the outcomes. These are systems like the weather. These are systems like education today. They are live systems in front of us. And we must realize that order is not the way to model such systems. We have excluded precisely this kind of behavior, these kind of systems, from our thinking of the educational system today. And I think one of the ways we can start making a difference and reconceptualizing this system of education today is by thinking in this mode and saying, what are the alternatives that are in front of us once we start thinking like this? And the first alternative, I believe will make a huge difference, is that we must try and meet scale with scale. And what does that mean? We have a large scale. We also have a large number of people, diverse people with diverse skills and abilities, who can help that conference where we all are together and we are learning about new things. Except that I cannot point to one single TED conference that was the source of my learning, but it's a giant watering hole. I believe these systems will be open, distributed. There will be a teacher for everybody who wants to learn, each person who wants to learn. And that is the open and distributed nature of the network itself. And I believe the way we have evolved, and we should evolve, is to a new way of learning and teaching. And just like the way we evolved from computer-based training to web-based training, we must now go to what I call network-based training, or NPTs. An important component of meeting scale will be to go local, understand local needs, make sure local councils are empowered to make decisions for education. At the same time, go global. Make sure that the information symmetries exist with the global network of educators and other stakeholders. We must build an architecture of participation. This is going to be extremely critical for us if we are going to redesign or reconceptualize our system of education. And we must try and build multiple paths to specialization. We must allow children to take different streams and then combine them, split them apart, learn what they want. And probably most importantly, and something that you might enjoy hearing, I want to reduce content drastically. I would rather go and say, cut down content by 80% and make sure that the experience of the remaining 20% is great and it helps you learn. All I'm saying is, we need to democratize education. We need to make education by, for, and of the people. And instead of looking at education as a process of creating learned people, let's look at education as a process or as a system that fosters learners, the ability to learn rather than the ability to be learned. What will this take? This will take awareness building at a large scale. This will take capability building. We'll have to have leaders who start thinking differently. We'll need to build creation spaces where such kind of thought can flourish. We'll also need a shift of control from regulated structures to more unregulated and autonomous structures. And we need to loosen a lot of the barriers that are there in education today from the legal and procedural side. And maybe conceptualize education as a social business itself. I would like to end with this great graphic. I don't know how many of you have seen it, but here's a guy who's trying to find X, and the way he does it, teachers don't agree, and he doesn't get the score in this case. So thank you very much for listening to me today. It was a pleasure talking to you.